Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Don Lemon Show. So glad you can join us. We have a very special episode for you today. Farmers and meat producers all across the U.S. can expect the on again, off again, really, tariffs on Mexico, on Canada, on China, and the retaliatory action from those countries to hurt their bottom lines by billions of dollars if they stay in place a while. And consumers, well, they could quickly see higher prices for produce and ground beef. Lots of stuff. There are a lot of things that are going to be affected by this. Farmers specifically, especially. I have the perfect guest today to talk about all of this, and that's Mr. John Boyd Jr. is a fourth-generation Black farmer, a civil rights activist, and the founder of the National Black Farmers Association, NBFA. John, thank you, sir. How are you?
Thank you, Don. Thank you so much for having me, and so very, very fortunate to be a guest of yours. So it's good for the American people to hear this story.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. It's always an honor. Listen, this isn't our first time at the rodeo, as they say. You and I have spoken about this because you remember back during the first administration, there were tariffs in place. We'll talk about it, but let's talk about now. When Donald Trump says, I'm going to add tariffs, but he doesn't believe that there are attacks on the American consumer or that there's danger, imminent danger for U.S. farmers, what do you say to that?
Well, the president has a way of saying stuff all the time, Don. And recently in his joint address to Congress, he said he loves farmers, is his exact words, or something like that to that effect. And here the very people that, in this case, 99%, Don, of white farmers voted for this president, are the very first persons in line to get affected by this president. He came right in, imposing tariffs and threatening tariffs and really causing a state of emergency for farmers in this country. Really chaotic the way he does it. One day the tariffs are on, the next day they're off. But what it does for the American farmers and Black farmers is it plays with the market. All the three major commodities in this country, corn, wheat, and soybeans. He threatens tariffs to Mexico, which is the number one purchaser of U.S. grown corn. He threatened tariffs to China, the number one purchaser of U.S. grown soybean production in this country. And I raised both of those commodities. And right now, the price is down based on all the rhetoric from the president and the issues at the United States Department of Agriculture, where the president came in and said there'd be immediate relief. Day one help for America's farmers. $30 billion lies dormant at USDA, not moving, and it's the beginning of planting season for American farmers.
Yeah. But bottom line, what does that mean to you? And then we'll talk about Black farmers specifically. What does that mean for farmers in general? You said they're the first in line. You mean the first in line to be affected negatively by these tariffs?
First in line to be affected negatively, Don, and the very first people that the president took aim at was his base in all of these red states. I want to be very clear. These are people that had pasteboard signs out here in southern part of Virginia with Trump. These farmers held rallies and meetings on their farms, and he went after them quickly and used them as a bargaining ploy with these other countries, not even taking into effect of what he would be causing them and their farming operation. Don, if you don't get farm operating loans and you have poor price commodities on corn, wheat, and soybeans, you wind up in foreclosure or on an auction block. So the president said in his speech, it's going to be a few bumps in the road and just give him a little time. Farmers don't have time. Now, we have the beginning of planting season, which is right now, and then we have harvest. We have to get those two times correct, and there's very little margin of error for planting season. And farmers don't have operating loans in place because the government has frozen programs at USDA. They came right in, Don, this president did, and fired everybody at USDA that had anything to do with equity, DEI. All those people went on day one. Totally erasing 4 decades of work that I put into getting those positions there at USDA. He came right in without the involvement of Congress and totally sent all those people home with some nasty email and a one pager.
Why is that important that people know what you're talking about? That what you're talking about right now?
It's important because USDA has never been a friend to America's black farmers. The reason why we got DEI is because we had master farmers, my daddy called himself, that wasn't being able to get loans on time. 387 days on average for USDA to process a black farmer's loan request. Less than 30 days, Don, to process a white farm loan request. I've been spat on by the county person there who's supposed to be making us loans. I've been called the N word. And in the 80s, we still had to come in the back door way after integration, Don. A line of us would be lined up out there. We all knew each other, and we never spoke about how poorly we were being treated by USDA. So here's a real agency who's never lent us any money, put our farms in inventory and pretty much gave them to white farmers for a penny on a dime. And now this president comes in and says everything is going to be about merit. We don't need the Office of Civil Rights. We don't need a civil rights director in each agency. We don't need any of those things. USDA is going to make itself good on its own. That's why it's very important to have those positions there. A watchdog where farmers, if we've been treated badly, we can file a formal complaint and at least go through that process. This president came in and said, we don't need any of that stuff. So it's like the Wild Wild West. And he threw all of this stuff up on the wall so fast, Don, that he didn't give the American people enough time to react. I think white people that supported him are even in great shock that how fast this president came in and just dismantled America by its core roots here.
Well, a couple of things. I want you to hold on to that. I don't want to forget because you said, let me write that down. Because when things happen, they're talking about merit now, right? Yes. And everything should be merit-based. But America hasn't always been merit-based. The white farmers, as tough as it is for white farmers, it's tough for all farmers, right?
Yes, it is.
But considering the history of this country, right? There's a history, and the history affects the present and the future. Okay, yes. Black farmers are always hit hardest when in downturns, and don't necessarily reap the reward when there's an upturn. Can you talk to our viewers about that? When they say merit-based and, everybody, this should all be equal, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right now, they've decided that that's what but I don't know if America's ever been merit-based or the farming industry, but go on.
It hasn't been merit-based. A couple of things here. I want to bring it right in your face today. $30 billion the last Congress passed to help America's farmers. This administration is now in charge of dispersing those funds. Black farmers are not on grid, Don. That means they don't have farm serial numbers. That means that they haven't done business within USDA within the past 5 years. They haven't reported their crops. None of that persons that I just described will be eligible to take part in this $30 billion. I understand this stuff. And people say, well, why? It's because we've been slaves on American soil. We've been sharecroppers on American soil. And they put all of our land in inventory, like I just described under the Jimmy Carter administration, when they said, it's great for blacks to come in and do business and trust the government now. Many black farmers got their deeds of trust tied up with USDA for a minuscule amount of money and wound up in foreclosure and their land in federal inventory. Because of all of that bad history.
Wait, what does that mean when their land's in federal inventory? Explain what that means.
It's in inventory. That's the same inventory that this president today wants to give white farmers in South Africa the land out of federal inventory and grazing land out of the Department of Interior. So the president wants to bring South African farmers who are white, WHITE, bring them to this country and a homestead type program and give them your land out of inventory and grazing land. But they want to say that it's equal and fair, Don, when they're taking other immigrants of color that look like me from Haiti and all these other places and sending them out by the boatloads right now as we speak. That's the type of merit that this president wants you to believe is fair and equal.
Why white farmers from South Africa?
Well, he's saying that they faced discrimination by
Elon Musk has said that as well.
the president. Oh, president, yeah, he said it here recently, within the past few hours, that he wanted to bring the white farmers. He's going to bring them in right now and give them a pathway to citizenship right now. And really, Don, I call it a land grab. And black farmers had, when they put our land into inventory, they've done it through, my daddy always said on it, they do it legally, through a program called Lease Back Buyback Program. The government touted it as a way to help small black farmers in this country. And they used that law really to take the land from blacks around the country, small scale black farmers, put their land into federal inventory and said, oh, we're going to lease it back to you until you can pay for it. That never happened, and we had 1.5 million acres in federal inventory that came from black farmers in this country. That the administration wound up leasing to white farmers for a penny on a dollar and selling most of the land to large-scale white farmers on a county committee for pennies on a dollar. So this is really a untold saga of what happened to blacks in this country. So every time I see the president says we don't need race-based, all of this stuff. It's really fancy terminology of doing away with blacks. So they put us, they change our name every 10 years, Don. Socially disadvantaged farmers of color, minority farmers. And now they classify us as DEI. Many black businesses and the rural communities don't even know what DEI means. So they put you in that box, and the president says everything with DEI. I said it in the speech the other night. We're completely doing away with that. Well, people, that's black farmers too.
Well, listen, a couple things here, okay? Because according to the reporting, Trump offers, this is a New York Times report, Trump offers South African farmers expedited citizenship. The president falsely claimed on social media that the South African government was confiscating farmland, echoing previous statements that the country was mistreating white people. The United States will immediately start offering a rapid pathway to citizenship for South African farmers, President Donald Trump said in a social media post on Friday, falsely claiming that South Africa's government was confiscating their land, and much worse than that. And that's a quote from him. The post largely echoed what Mr. Trump has previously said about South Africa, including in an executive order last month in which he suspended all American aid to the country and offered refugee status to Afrikaners, a white ethnic minority. Now, this is something I interviewed Elon Musk last year. He mentioned that in our interview, and here it is. Listen.
South Africa, I mean, look at what happened with apartheid. It seems to me that you should be someone who is more understanding of that, considering where you came from, considering your history.
Yeah. There's a slow white genocide going on in South Africa. Do you care about that?
And they want to take the land that you believe that it belongs to black farmers and give it to white South African farmers. How do people feel about that? Are white farmers even okay with that in America?
I don't know, but I can tell you right now, Don, I won't stand for it. And this president is sitting here doing that, and he says he loves farmers. He wants us a merit base. The first thing he can do is settle Boyd versus USA and return the land to black farmers and other farmers of color, the 17,000 black and other farmers of color. If he says he really loves farmers, instead he wants to bring white farmers in. The people who've been clearly discriminated and documented throughout history here in the United States are black farmers, capital B. Black farmers that look like me, my father, my John Boyd Sr., Thomas Boyd, all these people paid the piper to own land and farm in this country. And this president won't return the land here in federal inventory to black farmers, but he wants to bring white farmers, who he says is facing discrimination in South Africa, of all places, and bring them to the United States and give them a pathway to citizenship and land and a homestead, things he won't do for black farmers right here in the United States. Shame on this.
You said what?
Shame on this. Complete.
Yeah. Look, this isn't the first time that you dealt with MAGA and Donald Trump and what you said were racist tactics. There's an interview that we did back in 2019, I believe, where this racist message, I think it was the N word, was scrolled or written on a garbage can outside of your farm. Here it is in part of that interview. Watch.
John Boyd Jr. is a Virginia farmer and president of the National Black Farmers Association and a critic of the president's trade policies. Policies that caused China to retaliate with stiff penalties on goods like soybeans, hurting American farmers. Well, this week, Boyd found himself the victim of a shocking incident. He found the N-word plastered on a trash bin at the entrance of his farm. And John Boyd Jr. joins me now. Thank you, Mr. Boyd.
Don, thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on. So why do you think you were targeted?
Well, basically, I think it's more of retaliation from the Trump administration, and it's retaliation from my strong positions against the tariffs. And the tariffs have really hurt farmers like myself and other small-scale farmers and African-American farmers who haven't received their subsidy payments from the government. And the president has made a whole lot of promises, but very few of those things have reached farmers like myself. So every time I hear him making another announcement about more tariffs and more bailout money, it means bad news for farmers like myself. And you know, Don, it takes a lot of effort to go out and make a crop. And basically what we're looking for is a fair price for our commodity. And the president took away a 90% market for American farmers, soybean farmers, and they didn't open up other trade doors. And that's something that his U.S. trade representative could have worked on. The agriculture secretary should have been working on making more open markets for farmers like myself. And I've reached out to the president and asked him to meet about this. I reached out to the secretary, the agriculture secretary, and asked for a meeting. And Bloomberg asked him about my formal request to meet with them, the agriculture secretary. And he says, oh, well, I meet with black farmers, you know, while I'm out in my travels. But he hasn't met in a formal capacity. And I think that that's very disheartening.
Look, you don't need me. You can just keep talking for as much as I'm concerned, because, I mean, what you're saying is very compelling. I just have a couple questions for you. One, in all your years, did you ever have anything like this happen to you so boldly and so brazenly before you started speaking out about these policies?
Nothing like this. I have been called the N-word by agriculture secretary officials in the past. But, Don, that was in 1998. And here we are in the year 2019. And when we turned into our farm and we saw that, and, you know, we have children and they saw those awful words printed there. You know, the president ought to speak out against this. Here you have African American. I've been on CNN before, you know, speaking about these kinds of things. The president should condemn that type of racial epithet printed anywhere in these United States. The president needs to show leadership on race and bring this country together. But yet and still, the country is so far divided on race because the president of the United States doesn't do enough to bring us together. He's hurting our country right now.
Okay, John. So, but that interview could have been today. So what doesn't he get about tariffs?
And you know what, John? Could you hear the pain in my voice? I didn't get the check that I was eligible for, and it just supports everything I just told you. I was waiting on a check for my farming operation that I was eligible for, that white farmers had already received, and it was being delayed on purpose. Tariffs are bad news for America's farmers, all of them. Tariffs are worse news for black farmers because at the end of the day, when we can't get a fair price for our commodity, corn, wheat, and soybeans, and cotton, and all of these things, that means bad news in the long run when we have to pay our creditors. And one thing I've been saying today is we need a moratorium on farm mortgages in this country. We shouldn't be losing farmers while the president is paying footsie with tariffs and these other countries, Dom. That's the first thing. And the second thing, we're in a egg crisis in this country with
I was
eggs.
just looking at that question. I'm glad you mentioned that because you want to talk about the egg shortage and the frozen money by Trump farmers, but you said the egg shortage, egg crisis.
Egg crisis. I just left the grocery store and it was $14 for, one of those tray eggs, for a tray of eggs there. And I've been an egg producer most of my life. We have black farmers and the National Black Farmers Association that have poultry houses lying dormant because they can't make changes to their poultry houses. Now that we have the actual bird flu in, there's a certain criteria, Don, that farmers have to meet. They have to have it disinfected, you have to have updated equipment, all of these things before you can get a new flock of chickens in. One house can produce 20,000 eggs a day. Think of what that could do in a magnified effort around the country if we would put chickens in these black farmers' houses and invest in these farmers. Instead, they want to buy, this administration and president want to buy eggs from Turkey. Now, you explain that to me, instead of investing in farmers like ourselves. And I've been saying this, and we can't get the money when there's a catastrophe in our country. And that's the problem with black farmers in this country. When white farmers are getting helped, we're told we got to wait, or we lost your paperwork, you're not eligible, all of these things.
Yeah. I spoke with Will Westmoreland recently, who is a farmer. I think he's in the ag industry, and he said that white farmers take advantage of the subsidies and the incentives and the monies all the time, and somehow they are not qualified as DEI hires. Or DEI farmers. I want you to look at this. This is what a farmer told one of my colleagues over at CNN once he heard about the tariffs and deporting, really, this mass deportation of workers, immigrants, migrants, et cetera. Watch.
What percentage of your workers are not U.S. born?
Probably half.
About half?
Yeah.
How many hours does this go on?
It's 24 hours a day. We could milk 8 hours a day, but it wouldn't be feasible or profitable for us to produce milk.
So you need workers like this year-round?
Yes.
Governor Kristi Noem of South Dakota, her farm is just a few miles away. This farmer who voted for her, who voted for Trump, who still supports them, doesn't believe that they would round up immigrants and ask them for their immigration status because it's an open secret that farms in this state are held up by undocumented workers. Are you worried, like some of your other farmers, that if there were a mass roundup of undocumented migrants, that you might lose workers, you might not have enough workers?
Well, the question I asked, how are they going to do that? Within 2 days, we will not have food. There will not be food anywhere.
2 days?
Yes. That's why I predict nobody will be filling the shelves, nobody will be producing food. If we once have to shut down and be gone, it's never coming back.
Does Governor Noem understand that?
I would think so.
You have a lot of faith that they're not going to do what they're saying.
That's pretty much what I'm thinking. So we have to trust in our officials that are put in place.
Okay. They are rounding people up. It is affecting farmers. Why do they continue to vote for this president or the people who are hurting them?
Well, there's a couple of things. One, a white farmer in my neighborhood said he saw himself in President Trump. So they see a white man connection thing there. I kind of understand that part. The part I've been really beating on the Democratic Party is when you're in charge, execute your platform. Pushing the Democratic Party to go after rural America. I've been pushing the Democratic Party to have a platform for farmers. Whether you get them or not, go after that target body. They're a large voting bloc and their families, and instead they kind of wrote their part. They kind of wrote them out of their platform, and it's a huge mistake. For Democrats to win this next go around, farmers have to be a part of that agenda, and white rural America, you're going to have to go after that voting bloc. But why they just give away their vote to someone who clearly doesn't know anything about agriculture, and taking their vote for granted the way the president is, I don't understand it, Don. I really can't understand it. I live out here amongst it every single day. I talk to white farmers every day, and they will argue you down for this president, whether he's completely, flatly wrong, and they'll know he's wrong, and they'll come up with some excuse to support him anyway.
Yeah. So what are you going to do? Because you're back at it. We were talking tariffs and the mistake that was in 2019, and
Yes.
The discrimination that you were facing then. And here we are back in 2025. And you're
Well,
saying,
you know,
what are you going to do?
well, I'm glad you asked me that. You know, I lost my dad in 2022. We farmed together my whole life, and he taught me a couple of things there. One, on his deathbed, he said, John, never to let anybody tell you that your legacy and your heritage as a farmer isn't worthwhile. And that's what this president's trying to do. I'm going to keep pushing forward. I'm going to organize, and I'm going to push Black America to get up and wake up and do something. Don, right now, Black America's asleep. You got to wake up, stand up, fight back, push back. And at the end of the day, Don, this guy the president calls himself a king. That's what he says. Laughing, calling himself a king. But I know the real king. And he's sitting high and he's looking low, and he doesn't like what this president is going to do. And as my daddy would say, he's going to fix it. John, just give him a little bit of time. God is going to fix all this, Don. That's my message to America today that's watching this show. God is going to take care of this. He's going to take care of this president. Just give him a little time.
Yeah, but to the folks out there and the people you said Black America's asleep, the Lord helps those who help themselves too, right?
You got to wake up and stand up and get involved, Don, and fight back. You got to vote. And I watch these social media platforms, and we're too busy with nonsense. Erase the nonsense and put your podcast into their news cycle on the front of their pages so that they can see this important segment. Guess what? They can do all that nonsense, but at the end of the day, you got to eat. And the only way to eat is to support farmers. They need to go to our webpage and support us, blackfarmers.org. The same way that this president, when the sweeping action trying to take us out, is the same way our base needs to come in and save farmers in this country. In this case, Black farmers. They need to support us right now.
John Boyd Jr., thank you.